All right. Hello, dear listeners of the Mad Scientist podcast. I'm your host, Chris Cogswell, here with my co-host, Marie Mayhew.
What is up, my people? How's everybody?
We're doing great, Marie.
I always ask that question, sort of hoping someday there's going to be a chorus of like, yeah! And it's like, no, man.
You ever hear
this is a podcast? That's not going to happen.
It's not a live medium. You ever read those stories though about the people who they hear like scuttling in their walls and they think they they're missing food and whatever, and then they find out that a homeless person's been living in their attic?
Oh, hey, thanks for helping me get to sleep tonight, dude. As if that wasn't hard enough already.
Oh,
somebody might answer me back. They're all like, yeah.
Shut up! I'm trying to sleep. You're like, oh my god!
I'll just keep leaving food out for them. It's them and the raccoons, man. It's all good.
Tin Can Malone. It's trying to get your beans. I have this thing. We'll just do this quick. We'll do this story quick, and then we'll get into the episode. We'll get into the bulk of it here. I have a thing. I call it hobo soup.
Oh.
And what it is, because I think of it like hobos.
Oh, dear listener, we're in for a treat.
I think for some reason when I was a kid, did you see that movie Dennis the Menace? The Dennis the Menace movie.
I think I may have.
You might have been.
I may have.
I was gonna say okay. So it probably came out when I was like, I don't know, like 7, 6, around that age, whatever. And so when it came out, there's a scene where he is eating, he goes on the road or something, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but he
runs away from home.
He runs away from home, and then he ends up in a very sketchy situation with a bunch of hobos who are eating beans around a campfire. And so since that time, I've always associated beans, like baked beans, with kind of that 1920s version of bindle, stick and bindle, traveling the land, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
And so
Dust Bowl era.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
So I make this gross dinner that Katie hates, and I call it hobo soup, and it's baked beans with hot dogs in it.
Dude, that is so wrong. That is the most fucked up meal I've ever heard.
Okay. But if I'm feeling fancy, Marie, what I do, I'll get some kielbasa. I'll fry it up. I'll fry it up with a little bit of hot sauce, and then I'll put that in lentil soup. I call that hobu.
That is my hobo. Oh my God, that's terrible.
It's a delicious. It's so good.
For a minute, I thought if you were saying, if I'm feeling fancy, I might just put some spaghetti in there as well. And I was just going to
spaghetti and beans. Great idea.
So really quick, insofar as disgusting, gross meals, my family on my dad's side have this special treat that they'll whip up for themselves. And it is spaghetti tacos.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. I make spaghetti sandwiches. It's probably why I'm 800 pounds. But it's literally you make spaghetti, normal spaghetti, and then you take Italian bread, semolina bread, delicious. You put it you put spaghetti to eat it like a sandwich. Okay. It's the best.
Okay, so I'll give you that. So you're actually using a bread that you would normally it's garlic bread or something. Yeah,
it's weird. Right? It's weird with tacos.
But here's the thing: tacos, taco shells. God love them, man. I hear that and I'm just like, what? I don't think so. But that is taco.
I'm gonna have to try
spaghetti tacos. Spaghetti tacos for the people.
All right,
good stuff.
New official meal of the Mad Scientist podcast: spaghetti tacos.
Oh God, yeah.
All right,
yeah, dear listener, if you have any favorite disgusting meals that you whip out when you're home alone and your significant other or whoever is working late, let us know.
Let us know, please. All right, let's get into this.
We don't judge.
You judge me a little bit. It's fine. All right.
I'm just pouring another glass of wine. Hold on.
We're fine.
There it is.
Welcome to the Mad Scientist Podcast. This week's episode, Haunted Paintings.
I heard the cork actually open that time. That was good.
Yeah, you like that? Was that good? Here, we can do it again just for the people at home to have with your spaghetti tacos.
Delicious.
A nice Chianti.
A nice Chianti. Amazing. All right. This episode, we are talking about haunted paintings.
Redux.
Redux.
The director's cut, since we actually have already discussed haunted paintings once. But that's not going to stop us from talking about it again. Not because we're out of things to talk about, because that does not happen. But we both have some weird haunted painting stories. So, Chris, do you want to go first, or should I?
Yeah. So actually, I can kind of go first here. The thing that brought this topic to our mind specifically was we have talked a little bit on the show about my own kind of semi-paranormal experiences. And one of them occurred in my uncle Martin's house in Brooklyn. And so this house, unbeknownst to me, when I said this story, I was then told by another relative that they had a similar experience to mine where they saw basically like a shadow figure of some sort, kind of a being, staring at them at nighttime once. And my relative was freaked out, you know what I mean, and whatever. So anyways, and I hope it's okay that I shared that on the radio. I'm sure it's okay. But if not, I owe you a pizza. But anyways, it's because it's happening. But so
the shadow dude with dark eyes is like, all right, I'll take pepperoni.
Whatever. So recently it has come to my attention, at least, that actually that house has some sad history attached to it, especially upstairs. And so someone committed suicide in that apartment. And so the fact that it's potentially haunted in some kind of way or whatever is not necessarily that strange. I mean, it's strange, right? I don't know if I believe any of it, but it's not, it's kind of like where you'd expect this kind of thing to happen. Right? Now, the freaky thing that room has a very kind of iconic painting in my childhood, right? It's this kind of, it reminds me, my uncle has a house in the Poconos, and it has always reminded me of the lakes in the Poconos during the wintertime. And it's kind of painted in this sort of shellacked on way. Like the oil paint is very, very heavy, and it's scraped on. It's not really brushed, right? So it's got texture to it and everything as well. And the painting, and my mom actually has a similar style kind of in our basement, another room that has always freaked me out as a kid. But anyways, so this painting, it's kind of it's like an orange sunset over what appears to be like a river or some kind of lake or something. And it's, this
a tributary, egress, right? The water is. Yeah.
And it's this deep orange color with hints of blue and then white because of snow on these dead trees. And it's very, it's very vibrant, this painting, right? So I have told this story, but I never mentioned that painting before.
No, you actually haven't. This is true.
And Marie is out antique shopping one day.
As you do when you're a white lady who lives in the suburbs.
And she texts me and goes, dude, I just bought a really creepy painting.
Yeah.
And it is the painting.
It's the painting. No, but I mean, like, are you, God, I do wish that, like, one of your family members could maybe throw a painting, a picture of that painting over the fence and see. It could be, because I will say, I think from that time frame, that type of painting, probably that just like you said, that style was very prevalent. However, what I bought is it is an oil painting. It's not a reproduction. It's an actual oil painting.
No, my mom sent me a picture of the painting.
Send me the picture. Oh, geez, you know what? What are we doing here, people? Like, what? I want to see a picture of the painting.
Wait, I'm going through now. That's a picture of my pumpkin soup.
Oh God.
Or that
That's a picture of the pumpkin soup. Here's hobo soup right after it.
Wait.
I like to think hobo and pumpkin soup together.
Oh, it's on my other phone.
Seasonal.
It's the phone. No, it's on the phone that I. Hold on. Resend me
God.
the picture of the painting. All right. Anyways,
so
it is the painting. It's very okay. It's similar enough. It's so similar. I'm not going to say it is the painting because I don't have the picture with me on my phone because I traded it in for a new Google Pixel 2. Google, hit us up with that sweet ad money.
Sweet Google money.
But yeah, so okay. So I don't know if it's the exact painting, but it is so strikingly similar that it like you told me about the picture. You told me it was this creepy painting, and I was
found
like,
a creepy painting, and I
was
sent
like,
it to him.
Wait,
and then you freaked out, and
Yeah.
I was like, it's not that creepy, dude, but it is that creepy. It is actually that creepy, dear listeners. And I have posted a picture of the painting on Twitter. So go in, check me at Team Giant Squid, and you'll see a picture of said painting. I will post more just because now it's out in my garage, just because the cat is not like, the cat doesn't like the painting. The cat, first of all, the cat likes everything. The cat likes, there is nothing in this house that cat has a problem with. And the cat will eat anything as well. If you it ate my daughter's Crocs. Like, it literally took out a pair of my daughter's Crocs. And it's fine. And it does not like that painting. So the painting is out in the garage because no one in my house likes it. And so what we're thinking is we're just gonna, so it got us thinking, like, first of all, Chris like literally texted me back saying that's the haunted painting. And then it's sitting out of my garage. So we said, let's revisit haunted paintings. But as, just because we go the extra mile here at Mad Scientist, we're thinking, you know what? I don't want to keep this painting. I don't think Chris wants it.
No, I don't want the stupid painting.
Even if Chris did want it, Katie sure as shit doesn't.
No, Katie doesn't want the painting.
She's like, I'm done with you and your shit and your paintings, dude. No. So we here at the Mad Scientist will raffle that painting off to one of our Patreon members. We are going to give this cursed haunted painting up to you, dear listener, maybe to you, so you can hang it proudly in your den, in your kitchen, in your bathroom. I'm not gonna lie, it's not. I think it's kind of cool, but it's definitely creepy. It's definitely got a creepy ass vibe to it. So
now, to be fair, we have increased the creep factor a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Marie did a little bit of touch ups, make it a little bit more creepy.
I like to say, as one of our Twitter friends says, I love craftying up. Love craftying up a little bit to it, yeah.
But it is scary, and you'll have we're gonna send over Marie will sign it.
I will.
And, I'll send over proof of this connection to my spooky uncle's painting, and it's gonna be great.
And you will love it and cherish it. You will
love it and cherish it. All right.
Until it causes you madness.
Absolutely.
As you stare into the void.
Like the King in Yellow. All right.
There
are actually, so haunted paintings is a type of haunted object, and we've kind of talked about haunted objects on the show before, and specifically, I think we've mentioned my distaste for the television show Haunted Collector. Right? So that show, it's basically...
Even if we did, we have to do it again, just because your distaste needs to be recognized again.
All right, so the show is about a self-proclaimed demonologist, John Zaffis. It's on, of course, it is on the Sci-Fi cable television network.
Of course it is. I love that. Sci-Fi
has it's like occasionally it'll hit hit one out of the park with a really cool show, and then sometimes it's like, oh my goodness.
Then other times it's Sharknado 7.
Right, and haunted pawn shop wars and all that stuff. So anyways, this show, basically, this guy goes to people's houses where they claim that they have a haunting. He then finds the most expensive thing in their house and tells them that it's haunted. And he's like, the only way To fix your problem is for you to give me this antique grandfather clock.
Do you see this Tesla? This Tesla is haunted.
Clearly haunted. No, it's like he never goes for anything. Like he never, he's never so obvious where he's like, that's a haunted Xbox. That game's haunted too. Oh no, your charging cable's got a banshee in it. It's never that like specific or obvious, but it is very.
That would be us.
It really rubs me the wrong way. It seems so silly and so. I don't know. And the thing is too, I don't really know that much about the production of the show. I hope that he actually does not keep these things, or at least they repay these people for what they're worth. But it seems like a very niche kind of thing. Like you only deal with haunted objects.
Yeah.
Feels like eventually you're gonna run out, right? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. How long is the contract for, man?
I don't know.
If you're up for a few seasons, you're finding some haunted stuff out there.
I don't know. And it kind of seems like too, like, I don't know. In my mind, I feel like ghosts would act like kind of like bed bugs. Whereas like once a ghost gets into your house, it's gonna spread.
It's just rooted into that. You're going to have to take out the carpet. You're going to have to throw out the mattress, man. You're going to have to fumigate.
Well, I mean, like there are views of the ghost issue where it says that it's a spot. It's like a place in the earth. It's a place in space and time that is, or a place in space rather, that is haunted, not an object, not whatever. And so it's like, that is supposed to explain how you can, build on top of a burial ground or something and then have spirits that attack or something, right? Or, whatever.
Poltergeist, yes,
right. But it's like, if it's just an object, if it's true that ghosts haunt objects, an object is a really easy thing to test. You know what I mean? Like if there was a haunted skull or something, it would be super easy then to test that, and we would have evidence of ghosts.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think what I love about the idea of the haunted object, or especially the haunted painting, is there's, it's a good trope, right? It's easy to sort of work with. Like if you go into the haunted mansion at Disney World or Disneyland, you're walking down, the first thing you're going to see as you're entering the ride are the haunted pictures, right? And they change before your very eyes, and you're like, that's spooky, and it is. It's like, oh, I feel kind of off put by that. That's totally spooky. Or even in literature, and I don't think we brought this up the last time we did this episode, but the picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, right? Which is basically a haunted painting. It's a painting of, a man that never grows old, never ages, never feels any of sort of the effects of time, and has this decadent lifestyle that is demoralizing and dehumanizing. And the painting that he had commissioned of him, that he's hidden away in the attic or in some far-reaching corner of his house, is becoming the self-portrait of him is becoming this decrepit corpse. So it's aging and becoming almost this awful thing, but he's remains young. So it's sort of like, I think that is an interesting and kind of fun thing to visualize, because there's so many things you can do with a haunted painting, really. Right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an interest. First off, I actually never read that book, and now you've ruined it for me. So,
dude, I don't mean to, but that's sort of like a gimme. Come on, the picture of Dorian Gray.
No,
oh man,
it's on my Nook. I downloaded it a long time ago. I just have never gotten around to reading it. I guess I won't now. Thanks a lot, Marie.
Spoiler alert, it was written in the 1800s.
I know, it's like being upset.
Sorry.
It's being upset that someone ruined Moby Dick for you or something. It's like, well, if you didn't know that.
It's a giant whale.
Yeah. Anyways, so
Ishmael dies. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay.
No, he lives. All right, go ahead.
So the thing with the haunted painting, I think that is sort of especially interesting about this trope is that painting is, I don't know if, listeners, if you've ever really tried to sit down and paint something kind of realistically, and especially in the kind of pre-camera era, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paintings were really kind of, they were expensive. They were they were hard to, I mean, they're expensive now too, but they were basically the only way that humans had to recreate the world around them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that, what's really fascinating about that concept, to me at least, is that we talked last episode about the color blue, right? Or not last episode, 2 episodes ago now. We talked about the color blue. Well, how can you be sure that, I know what color something is compared to you if there is no objective frame of reference, right? I mean, of course, like you can look at a tree or something or a thing of grass and say, well, that's green and this is the same color as this and whatever. But really, painting is kind of one of the few ways we have of seeing the world in the same way other people have. And actually, that's one of the interesting aspects of Impressionism, right? Is that one of the arguments today is that the Impressionists, or some of the Impressionists, may have just had very bad eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
And so they actually saw the world as blurry, right? They did not actually see the world as it was meant to be seen. And I think a lot of us have that same experience of, I didn't realize that my eyesight was bad, that I needed glasses until maybe the 5th grade, when I could no longer see from the front row of the classroom. But like, other than that, I had no idea, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, I actually had I have a very good friend, who did not realize that he was colorblind until I wore a like puke green t-shirt. It was a really ugly shirt. I wore it one day on the school bus and he was like, why are you wearing a gross brown shirt? And I was like, it's not brown, it's green. And he like it blew his mind. Yeah. So anyways, so the other aspect of paintings that I think is really interesting is it takes such a long time to create a truly great painting. And it's, you spend hours on it. The artist does spend hours on it. And, it's easy to see how you would associate then them putting some part of their soul or their being into this thing. Because really, if let's say a painting takes 100 hours to complete, that is a not insignificant amount of time of someone's life that they're putting into this.
Yes, but I would also argue that you could put 100 hours into a painting and it could suck, right?
Oh, I mean, well, 100%, yeah. Well, those are the ones that get haunted, right? I mean,
this is the ones that naturally have to be haunted.
It sucks.
It's like, but I mean, like, what constitutes a masterpiece? What constitutes something that is now like canonized, that when you take art history or whatever, or when it goes up to auction, it is, it garners millions and millions of dollars. Like if you look at just, I think kind of gold standard for that is like Vincent van Gogh, right? Van Gogh's paintings sell for millions and millions of dollars. And I think that, and of course the great, speaking of tropes, the greatest trope there is like during his lifetime, he couldn't sell. He was broke. He was poor. Nobody wanted to buy his paintings. But now he is revered as this master. And I think there is this, especially within Expressionism, and things that happened sort of pre-World War I and up to that point, there's a safety in the image, right? It's beautiful imagery. It's still a little disjointed, like Starry, Starry Night is still very expressionist, or Irises is very, kind of, like very thick painting and very expressive, for lack of a better word, but it's also a appealing image, and it's a very safe, it's a safe thing to invest in, and it's a safe thing to sort of like in a lot of ways. When you start to move beyond that into, again, like art that became more famous in the 70s or even the early 50s with pop art, right? You have this disjointed mass production, things that weren't supposed to be, that were this clear break with aesthetically pleasing imagery into something that was, again, a Campbell's soup can. How is that worthy or in the same in the same genre as a Van Gogh. But in a lot of ways now, if you look at, again, if you go to a Christie's auction, it will command a huge price. And not that cost or price tag always dictates quality, but if you look at sort of massive cultural movements and sort of these epochs of when style and taste and these big movements happen, they don't always make a lot of sense, and they don't always add up to things that you think should be artistically valuable. I mean, I remember I went to a museum with my grandmother and in Pittsburgh, and it was a Warhol museum, and in Pittsburgh, where he's from, and we're looking at all the different Warhol paintings, and she just couldn't figure out like why this dude was famous, why this dude made money, she's like, I could do this. I don't understand why borax or whatever the boxes stacked on top of one another, why is this art?
Well, that's the funny thing, right? It's kind of, I think actually that's a really interesting point that they actually, the first time that I had heard it was on the Ricky Gervais podcast, right? Where they talk about how, you know, in some ways the most compelling form of modern art is advertising, right? Mm-hmm. It is kind of getting away with, art is in some ways not necessarily about the thing that you're making, but it's about, are you able to sell it, right? And that's kind of become the modern view of, or not really the modern view of art necessarily, because I think that for most people, it is still kind of what compels you, what is beautiful, right? But I think in some ways art has become very sort of, it's kind of almost or at least modern art is sort of very cheeky, right? It's very against kind of the grain. Now, the thing though that I find interesting with some of these haunted paintings, at least, is that if art is supposed to make you feel something, then one of, I would think, the most primal emotions, fear, is, I mean, for me, if I see a painting or something that makes me scared, that makes me have kind of a gut reaction, I don't necessarily know if that's a painting I want in my house, but that is certainly a painting that I would remember. That is a painting that would stick with me.
Right.
Right.
Like, I don't know if it will go with the divan, but.
Right. well, you know what I mean, though? Like, so we actually have a lot of, we actually in our house have a lot of art, or a lot of prints and paintings and things. And some of the paintings that are in our living room are actually wood engravings from Dante's Inferno. Right. These beautifully drawn, or these beautifully made images of, of hell, and then of paradise, and of purgatory. And so not just the Inferno, but the whole Divine Comedy. But primarily the ones that always were more kind of, that always stuck out most to me were the ones from Inferno, because they scared me so much as a kid that now, looking at them today, I can appreciate them for their value and their artistic merit, but also that gut feeling that I had as a kid, that's never really gone away. And it's so compelling still to have those and to see them and say, what was it about this that scared me so badly? Right. And I think, and so it's interesting to me that we actually don't see more examples of almost scary or frightening art. I mean, actually, the one instance that I remember very, very vividly that terrified me as a kid, and actually still terrified me to some extent when I was older, even not that long ago, in the museum of what is the museum called? Not the Museum of Modern Art, but there's an art museum in Boston, a Museum of Fine Arts, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Yeah. It is right near Northeastern, where I went to grad school. It has this amazing campus. It's like this beautiful giant, like all the trees are ginormous, the building is ginormous, all the columns are ginormous, and it has these two or a couple of really creepy like baby doll heads, these ginormous baby doll heads that are there. But anyways, you go in and they actually have a hall that is dedicated to sort of like Renaissance religious paintings. And those paintings are so huge. And like the view of them is so overwhelming that it's, looking at them online does not do them justice. It is the size, it is the scope of these paintings, and just the overall aura of seeing, Jesus on the cross or something, that it is awful and beautiful all at once, right?
Yeah. Terror and beauty come from the same place, according to Greek philosophy, right? Like if you are terrified of something, it has moved you as much as beauty, right?
Sure.
It's the same visceral emotion. It's just, it's like two sides of the same coin. And I think that with really good art, any like painting or even movie or any form of expression like that, if you can recognize its beauty, but you can also recognize the terror within it that brings you to like this point of awe, right? Like religious iconography, like, Christ on the cross. You can't say that that's necessarily beautiful, right? That's not a beautiful image. It's a terrifying image, though. And it kind of puts you in the same mindset, I think, in a lot of ways.
So I think this episode we wanted to focus on kind of two haunted paintings specifically, right?
Oh, I had a couple.
Oh, you got a couple. Okay. So I actually want to talk about one of my favorites first, and then we'll let you just go nuts. All right.
Okay.
So one of my favorites is a series actually of paintings by Giovanni Bragolin, and it is it's a specifically one painting that was mass produced during the 50s called The Crying Boy. All right. Now, Bragolin, what he basically is kind of famous for, which is really interesting, is painting these portraits of crying orphans in Italy. Yeah. So he painted them. He painted them interestingly, all around the same time, and so the painting itself was this. What's the word? It became mass produced and became very, very popular. After the 50s specifically. And this painting was so famous, or became a part of a urban legend, where supposedly the painting itself, the image, was haunted. Even though this painting was mass produced, it was thought to somehow be the cause of a number of house fires. And the legend, and actually this is my goodness, the Ricky Gervais connections continue. Carl talks about this on one of the Ricky Gervais episodes, about this painting that's haunted and whatever. So interesting. But anyways, Carl, if you're listening, please come on the show. But
shout out.
Anyways.
Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
Hello.
Steve Merchant. Yay. All you guys, you're our heroes. Oh. So
is it wrong that I think Steve Merchant is kind of sexy?
No, Steve Merchant's
Jermaine. Him and Jermaine from Flight of the Conchords. I think they're sexy.
Interesting.
I know.
Huh.
I guess I have a type. We can talk about that on a later episode.
Oh my goodness. All right. We're getting off the rails. So this painting is considered haunted. And like I said, the cause or supposedly leads to house fires or whatever. And the myth became so popular that, there were rumors that, firefighters wouldn't even have them in their homes because they knew, we go to a burning house, the crying boy is there. And specifically what was interesting about it was that this painting supposedly would not burn. Even if the rest of the house burned around it, this painting would not burn at all. Now, what is supposed about these paintings is that because they were mass produced in the 50s, they were made with flame retardant chemicals. So, and what would occur then during a house fire is that the rope or whatever was holding, the twine that was holding the painting up, would be the first thing to burn on the painting. The twine would then snap and it would fall to the ground, protecting the painting from the heat of the fire and therefore being engulfed in the flames. There's no, and of course there's no evidence that this painting has anything to do with house fires or any of that kind of stuff, but it is an interesting legend.
I love it because, just because of flame retardation, right? That you can't like, it won't burn. It naturally has become supernatural.
Well, yeah, and I mean the thing. So, and that conclusion too, that idea of them being, made with these flame retardant chemicals and stuff, that actually was proven. It was tested by a BBC Radio 4 program. So, anyways,
and if you see this image, like this image is such schlock.
It's so
like,
sappy and terrible, and it's kind of the it's even got the little tears on the little boy's face. It's sad
because he's crying. He's looking right at you, and he's like, "Won't you?" It's like you might as well have Sarah McLachlan and piano playing, and they're like, "This is Giovanni," and then you see this small crying child. Giovanni only wanted to come to America. But this was like, won't you help?
This was like a real kid in like a 1930s orphanage in Italy.
Can't you help?
Oh my God. All right. Cold-hearted over here.
Come on. It's awful.
It's actually, I think though, that is actually something that is interesting about media, about art, about we, in some ways, the access to such horrible things on the internet has in some ways, I think, actually desensitized us. And also too almost, and not even desensitized. That's kind of a silly, because this is a slippery slope towards video games cause violence and whatever. But I do think though that our visceral, we will never have another moment like after Vietnam when those first photographs of the war were coming in. Do you know what I mean?
I hope we never do.
Well, okay,
right?
Of course we hope we never do. But I mean that though in the sense that we'll
never have that raw emotional seeing firsthand the horrors in the world.
Right, because our generation has grown up with
strange times, my friend. Strange times.
That's true. But anyways, I just find it very interesting that, until, I don't know, maybe when a new, video, I guess, would be the same kind of thing. Or, I don't know, simulation. I don't really know where the next, obviously we can't predict where the next kind of art or next media for journalism will go. But it's certainly
next visceral horror.
Yeah, corner. Right. Yeah. But anyways, Marie, what are your haunted paintings?
My haunted paintings. Okay. So last time we did sort of your standard, if you go in and you do your research on haunted paintings, you're always going to have one or two come up. One, Hans Resistum.
Yep.
Right. Which is relatively famous. That's the famous eBay painting. It was offered on eBay. Somebody bought it. It was haunted.
And that one we did in some detail.
Yes.
On our last episode on this.
Yes. So I'm going to skip that just because I think it's interesting. I think it's actually a good painting. It's very uncanny. It is very unsettling.
It's one of those ones that gives you the gut check.
The Anguish Man by Unknown. I think again, this is a picture of just a man screaming. It's got a nice backstory to it. Still, I'm not going to do it. I do think it's a little heavy-handed. There's Crying Boy. So the one that I wanted to look at is actually, I found it. It's an actual painting that is not necessarily haunted as it is cursed. And it hangs at the Royal Holloway College, the museum at the University of London. And it's by Edwin Lanster. And it's called Man Proposes, God Disposes. And it was painted in 1864. So this painting hangs in a university, and it is a painting of the well-known and fabled Franklin ship, the Terror and the Ibris, when they went to go discover the Northwest Passage. It is a take on that was painted at the time, but the ships were still missing. Right? So the subject matter, basically, I will describe it. I'm not going to do due diligence. It's sort of a long, it's not it's a weird size for a painting in that it's a long, skinny triangle. Hello, long, skinny rectangle. And it shows the Arctic, right? So you've got sort of the blue-gray skies, the icebergs, and then there's this wreckage of a mast and two polar bears basically ripping apart what looks like what is left of this Arctic exploration. And one is ripping apart this piece of cloth that is sort of this dirty blood red. And that's on the left side. And then on the right side, you have a polar bear poised over what I am looking at and interpreting as a human rib cage, eating a rib bone. Right? And it's like, so this is hanging up in a college, which is awesome. But it's this, and it's, the title of it is really very interesting as well. Man proposes, God disposes, which is basically, again, sort of the folly or the hubris of the idea of going in and, taking a ship into the Arctic to discover a passageway. And basically, this idea that you will discover this, you can presuppose your will onto nature and nothing will happen. And that's man proposing, and God will dispose of you in that you will eventually die. Right? Or you will be laid to waste by your folly because you're not coming out of this in one piece, which was the case with this Arctic exploration. So this picture hangs in this college, and every year when they have at the university, when they have finals, they drape a Union flag over it, right? They drape the Union Jack over it, because there is this mythology around this painting that a student sitting there taking the test was under such stress and fixated on the polar bears and on the subject matter so much that he put a pencil through his own eye.
Whoa!
In the middle of the exam. Right? Which is awesome.
That's one way to get out of a test.
Right? And there's other, like, that's one urban legend. The other is like, another one stood up in the middle of the test and committed suicide and just said the polar bears. But I think that's like, I will say that painting was completed about 2 years after they went missing. And the artist himself, who was, again, the last name, Lancier, really normally committed himself to like much more placid subject matter, like dogs. Like if you think of a typical English painting that would hang in your manor house, it would be of your dog, and its puppies or whatever. That's what this guy was known for. But all of a sudden he whipped out with this. And and it's like, and Franklin's widow at the time, who was who again, her husband has now vanished in the Arctic. He's gone. She even saw the painting, and because again, this guy, the artist himself, is relatively well known, so she heard that the subject matter was going to be, that the subject was going to be, exhibiting, right. And she went and she saw it, and she was like, you can only imagine that basically you're looking at a painting of your loved one who you saw off on a boat, expecting to see back in another year or another 8 months, being eaten by polar bears. Mm-hmm. You can only imagine, like, basically, or what her reaction to it was, which was, dude, that's kind of fucked up. That's some fucked up shit. And you should stick with dogs, I think, basically, is what she came up with. But also to the subtext in the painting, which I think is even more insidious. So with any, again, any good art, you look at it, and what is kind of not evident, but is part of the story, is that these group of sailors probably would have turned to cannibalism, right? So the polar bears are getting there, and they are not actually the agents of the sailors' demise, right? They froze to death, or they died of the elements, or they killed one another and started to eat one another, and they're just sort of scavengers, cleaning up man's folly.
Right, man's hubris.
Man's hubris, right? But
Yeah.
they weren't the actual cause of it, which is even like more like, whoa.
What's
Right?
really interesting with that is
Mhm.
so the Northwest Passage, for listeners that don't know, was sort of almost a mythical route, right? So we thought, before the Panama Canal was built, there was really no way around North America, right?
Mhm.
So you basically either had to go down around the Cape of, you either had to go all the way down below the farthest reaches of South America or around the Horn of Africa, or that was it. That was all you could do. Or you could travel by wagon, right?
Mhm.
Overland into country that at that point, was still not really safe and known and whatever.
No.
Safe, I should say, for colonial settlers. Now, the Northwest Passage was this proposed route that could be traveled between basically New York Harbor and pretty much the other side of America, right?
Mhm.
The idea was that you could travel through this passage, this small, basically all of the Great Lakes, all of these rivers and tributaries and whatever would connect, or did connect, all together to connect the Atlantic and the Pacific. Something that today we know is not the case, right? There is no direct route through the rivers and things up north, right? You have to go through the Panama Canal, or again, still to this day, travel the way that they used to, right? So a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of investment, and a lot of lives, frankly, were spent trying to find if this thing was true or not. And the reason was that basically, if this was true, if you could find a route that would do this, not only would you be a famous explorer, you would also become comically wealthy, because you would control trade. You would have a route to traverse that was faster than, the fastest route available at the time. Now, so that part of it is fascinating. What I think, that story is so great.
I love that. Well, I love too that it's so Victorian and so explorer. Like, they are going to discover this mythic passageway in these ships and their finery, and the sun will never set on the British Empire, and it's civilization. They are civilized men, right? And they are bringing civilization and into this uncharted, dirty, pagan land. And, and they're going to conquer it. There's no doubt during the time that, like, the Victorian mentality was, there's nothing in nature that we cannot conquer.
Well, yeah, manifest destiny, right? We thought that we could, we could come and do what we wanted, right? Basically, and then we turned into polar bear poop
by our will. And it's like this, like, I think this image is very arresting, because it basically it's like a pretty clear no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna happen.
You're folly. And the interesting thing too, but I did not know until further reading on this, that this hung in a women's college. So this wasn't even this huge painting of these two polar bears scavenging and decimating amongst the ice caps, hung in Victorian times for female education.
That's so interesting.
That to me, and it's like, again, if normally, if you were going to put art in front of women in Victorian times, it would be sweet, it would be domicile. Again, it would be much more crying children, right? It would be much more like of mother and hearth and nature and something pastoral.
Very kind of very
about this.
No,
Right?
this is
But this is much more of almost a call to like, this is a this kind of is a hard reset on thinking and how your thought process is.
yeah.
So what I love about it though is to this day they cover it, right? They cover it with the Union Jack flag. They cover it with the flag. Because again, which is wonderfully British, because it's like, again, we will triumph over the unknown. We will triumph over that which makes us lose control. The British, they've got this shit down, and let's all take our tests. And nobody put out their pencils with any, or put out their eyes with any pencils. Everything's fine.
Right. That is a really good one. So
that's my favorite. Oh, and by the way, on the expedition, the Franklin expedition, if you are not already, you should tune in AMC, The Terror. They have an ongoing fictional series on this based on the Dan Simons novel, which is so good. It's really, the book was excellent, and the TV series is scary as hell.
So
check it out.
That sounds like something I'll definitely have to check out. So one of my favorites is not actually thought to be haunted. But I love it because it has such a interesting It has such an interesting sort of first off, these paintings are so weird, and they were made in a weird way, and they're out there made by a weird guy. And then they have this connotation today with one of our most, in my mind, fascinating kind of true crime characters, at least fictional characters, which is Dr. Hannibal Lecter, but specifically with Dollarhide, with the Red Dragon, right? Francis Dollarhide, which is from the book Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, one of the best, in my opinions, one of the best sort of detective horror suspense novels of all time. And that painting, of course, is William Blake's The Great Red Dragon series. And specifically, the one that's mentioned in the book that they actually misshow in the it's the Great Red Dragon and the woman
Hollywood
clothed in sun.
And the woman clothed in sun, yeah.
But in the book, they mention the Great Red Dragon and the woman clothed with the sun. But in the movie, they show in the woman clothed in sun. Now, this comes from so these paintings were done by William Blake, and William Blake is known for Enlightenment philosophy, his sort of idea of these things. But his paintings are terrifying and amazing, and they come with these scary sort of quotes and things and poems with them and stuff, right? And it's very sort of like, I don't know, it reminds me very much of it reminds me very much of like the Smashing Pumpkins art style of their and that was all the stuff that I really liked about the Smashing Pumpkins, really, was all their weird art style and everything. But so the Great Red Dragon series is from a series of books a series of paintings that he did basically around religious themes. And this is specifically about Book of Revelation, the passage that goes, quote, "And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and had cast them to the earth." So these paintings are huge, right? They're very, very large. Or they're not, huge. So the Great Red Dragon and the Woman Clothed in the Sun, they're huge in the sense of their detail and their sort of, it's hard to explain unless you see these paintings, but they are kind of, you expect them in seeing them in your mind, at least in my mind, to be huge, that you expect them to be ginormous, right?
Yes. Scale wise, even on the canvas, they're on canvas, right? Are they on paper?
They're on, they're watercolors.
Yeah. So they're on paper, yeah.
Yeah, they're so the Great Red Dragon is 44 centimeters tall by 35 centimeters wide. So not that big.
Not that big, but
Not big at all.
And the subject matter, describe the subject matter, because I think that that's like, if you haven't seen it and you are not familiar with any of the popular culture that would have led you to have seen it.
So it is a painting. So the one that's most famous for its connotation with Red Dragon, the book, is a woman with fiery kind of blonde, almost like sunlight hair, who is lying prone on the ground and staring up in awe or terror at the devil. And the devil is shown as this muscular, terrifying demon beast with huge muscular legs and a muscular back and a huge serpentine tail. And, these giant bat-like wings, and the colors are muted and scary. And it just really and there's a series of these. So the first one is that. The next one is a devil with 7 heads staring down at this woman with this coiled tail. And she is, again, clearly in this image, an angel, again, with this kind of sunshine hair and these big wings. And she's, again, looking up at the devil in some way. And then you have the ones where it's, again, sort of the devil looking at demons and the devil with a monster from the ocean deep. And these pictures are just, they're like what you expect to see on an acid trip. Right?
Yes.
They're in like
not that we know because our mom listens to the show.
No,
but I have read.
Right. They are these terrifying, arresting images that are immediately you see them and you think, oh my goodness. And part of their cultural significance here is in the book, or in the story, or the movie especially, you have Dollarhide takes off his robe, right? And he has a tattoo, a giant tattoo of the devil on his back, right? And that is what he thinks he is becoming, is this devil, this demon being of some sort, who has to kind of take the essence of these people away so that he can become stronger. It just, I don't know, that painting, the series of paintings that Blake did are so, I think, odd and almost show kind of a fervent religious feeling. But they look, all of his work looks so magical. They look like what you expect alchemical drawings or a book of witchcraft or something to look like.
Yeah.
To me, that all their, their motifs and the poetry even with them, because they're written, there's paintings, but then there's poetry on the page as well. It's just, I don't know. They're fascinating to me. And if there was going to be any series of paintings that would be haunted, it would be this series of paintings.
So interestingly enough, it reminds me of a conversation that we had with Sam Fredrickson from
Not Alone.
Because he was saying, we were talking about what out of the Bible, what's the most badass entity, right? What's the most badass beast that you come up against? Because he's all Leviathan, and I was like, well, I don't know, like Legion, and he's like, Legion's punk ass. Legion's not blah. They fell in the water, and he's like Leviathan, and but now I got to tell you, like I forgot about the whole part, because it is from somewhere in the scriptures that's described. That's pretty. I think Sam's got a new contender.
I would say so. I think
so.
Well, there we go then, Marie.
There we go. Definitive word. I think so. Well, and I will also say, like, watercolors too. It's like that's a really hard medium to. It's not like oil that you can just sort of like let it dry and then maybe scrape it off or put some more on. If you mess up with watercolors, you basically are screwed, right? Because there's no painting over it. It's seeped into. It's seeped into the paper itself. It's porous, and you have to be kind of confident and right off from the get-go, which is the thing that I think is even more amazing about Blake's art.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, I don't know, for me, they have a very again, the scary connotation to this movie that scared me as a kid. And then also this, just the way they look and everything. I think they're beautiful and scary again, all at the same time, like you were saying.
What are you doing watching this? Were you up like late? Like you were like HBO? And you were supposed to be watching that?
I was not supposed, so my mom worked late nights. And so she could be with me during the day. And so I would stay up at nighttime. Just like my dad would fall asleep and be out like a light, and then I would be in my room playing video games until 3 a.m. when my mom came home. And then,
or watching this being like, I cannot blink ever again.
Right. Or watching scary things that were too adult for me. Anyway, so Marie, did you have another haunted painting?
No, I think I'm double down on the polar bears, scavenging for human remains in the Arctic, because I think that one is pretty badass.
That is also, you know what? The other thing too, I think that is also a sort of like, it is a gut check again to Victorian sensibilities, but also it is a kind of like, that was probably the only time that they ever saw an animal eat a human. That's the closest that they would get besides being there.
Right? I mean, and to your point, like, again, the pictures that would come out of Vietnam of actual in situ happenings, the Victorians, like, again, the Arctic expedition, they would sail off, they wouldn't be seen for months, years, right? And they would probably come home, but there was no sort of depiction of what was happening. So these people go, they vanish. There's no word back from them really. And this is sort of like, this is almost like a photograph of what happened. And if you were the widow of the man who was essentially in charge of all these men, all these boys, they were really pretty young, all of their lives, and this greater expectation of conquering nature, being faced with, kind of what the reality would look like, I would assume that would be really kind of like awful, and sorrow and terrifying, and also like, but the painter who came up with it, I want to read more about him, because like I said before, it was like pretty benign work, like pictures of dogs, pretty, civil subject matter, and then boom, whipped out with this.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So check it out. Check it out.
You know what, dear listeners, I think the moral of this episode, in the eternal words of Homer Simpson, the lesson here, never try.
Never try. Yeah, never don't, there's just not, don't do it. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. But here's what you should do with all that. The only caveat is you should go on Patreon. You should throw in a buck, because you know what? That buck might just win you a truly haunted painting, which is sitting in my garage, slowly gathering power and calling to its inky dark minions out there, which maybe it's raccoons. I don't know, but we're gonna be giving that up, people.
Yes, so, and of course, if you would just like to enter the raffle, there are, of course, no hard feelings. If you just want to enter 1 month and then, turn it off or whatever, you give $1 one time, we'd completely understand, and we thank you for your support. And yeah, I'm excited.
Absolutely.
I think what we'll probably do is in a month from when this episode releases, we will have the raffle.
Yes. I will take pictures of it and just, so you guys know what you're getting yourselves into. My cat, Sophie, will thank you so she can quit hissing at it.
So scary. All right, dear
scary
listeners.
Stuff.
Thank you again so much for listening. This has been the Mad Scientist Podcast, and we'll be back in another week with our next episode. I think, Marie, we're getting into something sciencey next week.
Science! What is that? What are we doing? What is it?
I don't know yet.
Tell people.
We're going to do it.
Tell people what they want to know. Oh, it's going to be sciencey goodness.
It's going to be sciencey goodness. All right.
Thank you, dear listeners.
Thank you again, dear listeners, for listening to the Mad Scientist Podcast. I have been your host, Chris Cogswell, joined by my co-host,
Marie Mayhew.
If you'd like to contact the show, please send us an email at themadscientistpodcast@gmail.com. That's all one word. You can also follow us on Twitter at Mad Scientist Pod or at Team Giant Squid for Marie. And of course, you can see us on Facebook, on Instagram, and all over the internet as the Mad Scientist Podcast. And again, our logo is the one with the pumpkin head, so it's easy to see.
Mm-hmm.
If you've enjoyed the show tonight, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where the money that you give to us will help us to promote this show further, to make it better, and just to spend more time making it.
Because we love doing that.
We do love doing that. Our logo was designed by Carrie Shaheen. Our web design is done by Desdemona Howard.
Woohoo!
And our sound design is done by Jake Cardinal. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you. This has been a Damn It Chippy production.